Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Stemming the Skills Gap webinar. We're excited for you all to join us today as we have both our educator digital community connected on Zoom as well as our in-person educator group here at the TGR Learning Lab in Anaheim, California. So please look forward to an engaging learning experience with both groups today as we share ideas on STEM education. So before we get started, I wanted to share briefly about the co-facilitators for today's webinar. My name is David Tong, Director of TGR EDU Create, which focuses on providing professional development opportunities in STEM and college access to our educators. I'm a former math teacher with a background in the exciting world of computer science and love to share my passion in technology, especially as it relates in STEM education. I'd also like to introduce our other co-facilitator, Jason Porter, who also directs our professional development efforts of TGR EDU Create on the East Coast and also internationally. He has over 18 years of experience in STEM education and has a strong background in microbiology and science education. So let's kick off the Stemming the Skills Gap webinar with a commonly used definition of STEM education. So STEM education is an interdisciplinary approach to learning where rigorous academic concepts are coupled with real-world lessons as students apply science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in contexts that make connections between school, community, work, and the global enterprise, enabling the development of STEM literacy and with it, the ability to compete in the new economy. So there were a lot of words there, a lot of phrases that I think a lot of us identify with. I'd like to highlight a few of these words that our educators have shared in the past that resonate most within their educational environments. So you'll see there, STEM education really allows for an interdisciplinary approach to teaching so that these subjects like math and science aren't completely seen as isolated topics by our students. And I think it's also becomes important that the ideas are brought forth in the real world context so that our students can apply meaningful learning to make these connections between the world they live in. And these practices also allow them to become STEM literate and really more empowered to thrive in the future economy. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to Jason to share a bit about the global STEM paradox.
Yeah, so now that we have a definition for STEM, so we kind of have some understanding what STEM is and how it connects to us, let's talk a little bit about the global STEM paradox that you may or may not have heard about before. So one of the interesting things is you very often hear that there are not enough qualified college graduates in STEM to fill the jobs. And the paradox of that is if you look globally, if you look at the number of graduates in STEM fields every year, there actually are plenty. There are plenty of people who are graduating with the degrees, computer science and in engineering and in life sciences. There are plenty of people who have these bachelor's degrees, maybe masters and PhDs. The paradox, though, one of the challenges is that people aren't hiring them. So when you look at these companies that are pharmaceutical companies or the computer programming companies and various other tech companies, they're interviewing lots of people and not hiring the people that are coming to them in a very large part, and they have jobs that are unfilled. So this paradox is there's plenty of people to fill the jobs, but a lot of those people are not getting the jobs. So why is that? And there's really kind of four major reasons that the researchers have found that tends to be what's reported of why people are not getting these jobs. One is shortage of graduates with these power or soft skills. So really these are kind of the intangible skills that we probably all know, and on the webinar we probably all know as professionals that we use all the time in working with each other, but they're not necessarily taught in school, either K through 12 or even in a college environment. Then also qualified technicians. So there are lots of PhDs in the world that want to go into these technical careers, but those qualified kind of blue collar technicians, those are really needed. And there tends to be a lack of them. The loss of high skilled workers. So you may have heard of like brain drain before. It's like, so somewhere like Silicon Valley has a lot of really talented people, but other places maybe not so much. So people tend to get pulled into fairly heterogeneous environments. and not staying necessarily where they were trained. So they're not everywhere that they need to be. And then finally, these untapped pools of talent. This really has to do with diversity. A lot of what we're talking about at the TGR Foundation with access and equity in education is that we need all perspectives, right? So when only a few perspectives are seen, you lose something in that talent pool. So what we're really going to be focusing on today, you may have guessed this from the title of the webinar, Stemming the Skills Gap. We're going to be focusing on these power skills because I alluded a moment ago that they're not typically taught, but can they be? Can you teach these? Can you as an educator actually set the scene for these skills? So that's what we're really going to be working through in this webinar today, is kind of showing yes, there could be some opportunities. So how can we set that up? Okay, so now, as David mentioned before, the poll everywhere, this is where we're going to use this. So you can go on to pollev.com, TGR EDU Create 494. And what we're asking you is, what are the power skills that are needed to excel and can be developed in schools or in educational environments? So that's the question we're asking. If you could please share a few words. What are these skills? What are the power skills? And for you joining on the webinar, if you could also please join into that poll and give us some answers to that as well, that'd be great. Okay, so we're just thinking about what are those skills that, not necessarily technical skills to do a basic job like, say, computer programming or something, but what do you need as a professional in any environment to work with others and to be able to do a professional job? Okay, so collaboration, beautiful, good, much more coming up. And this is a word cloud, so just make sure everyone's aware. The bigger the word, the more popular it is. Yeah, hey, like that. Communication, very good. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give this another about 20 seconds for people to keep sharing what's there. 21st people, yeah. Analyzing, reading, text, good. Okay, and we're seeing some similar things in the chat: creativity, critical thinking, dedication, teamwork. Great. And so I'm going to focus on a couple of these. So the collaboration and the communication, I think, are really good ones and ones that people are saying a lot. And so I'm going to focus on these in terms of thinking about the science and engineering practices from next generation science standards. Okay. So thinking about communication. So these, for those of you who are not familiar, so these are the different science and engineering practices that are found in the next generation science standards. And really what sets those standards apart when they were created is so those standards can not just be about assimilation of knowledge or development of knowledge, but actually learning the habits of which you can do and apply that knowledge. And so our practices that have a lot to do with communication are things like engaging in argument from evidence. So how do we prepare students so they can actually do that? So that communication skill, you may say, oh, science is learning these factoids, but if you can't communicate it to someone, did it happen? Is it something you can actually get out there in the world? And then in thinking about collaboration, I think the bottom one of obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information, that's really, again, it has a lot to do with communication, but it has a lot to do with, similar to the argumentation, convincing people. And working with others of different skill sets that they may have to come up with an ultimate answer or conclusion to some evidence that you may be working on. So it's very rare for them to be working totally by themselves, even if they feel like they are. And even if you are, that communication is so key to get your ideas out to other people. Okay. So I'm going to, so that's kind of like a preamble for why this webinar, right? Why is this the topic of the webinar, this skills gap? Like, we know from the paradox that people need these skills, these power skills. So how is it that we can actually, as educators, set up opportunities for them to not only learn them, but practice them so they can develop these in their everyday work? So I'm going to throw it over to David so he can get us started in the practice we're going to do today to learn more about this.
All right, so we're going to explore the idea of developing these power skills through some STEM practices. We're going to take a couple of different approaches first, just so we can kind of see from different perspectives and how this can be accomplished. But our initial approach is more going to be in a traditional model. So I'm going to be sharing with you a simple math problem. And I'd like for you to approach this individually, independently, and then making sure that you have your paper in front of you to do so. And again, you'll want to use the paper to help you record this problem for those of you in our virtual audience. This won't be available during the breakout sessions, so make sure that you record the gist of the question that we give you here today. So here we go. So we're gonna assume that the odds of being born in each of the 50 states is the same, okay? The question is, if you have a completely random group of 10 people born in the US, what are the odds that 2 of these 10 people were born in the same state? Okay, so again, initially we're gonna be working on this on our own. I would like for you to think through for about a minute or two, and then we'll be asking for predictions about what you think the odds are going to be. Okay, so go ahead and jot this down on paper. And assuming that the odds of being born in each of the 50 states is the same. Okay, what are the odds that 2 of these 10 people were born in the same state? Okay, go ahead and think about it for a minute. I'd like for you to approach it in however you think would allow you to best arrive at the solution independently. Okay, and as you're working through this, we'd like for you to share your predictions at the Poll Everywhere link. Again, going to pollev.com/TGR EDU create 494. You can share your prediction to the problem. What would be the probability, what are the odds that 2 of the 10 people were born in the same state? Okay, so go ahead and enter in what you think is most closest to the percentages. Looks like we have a couple of responses leaning more towards the 10 and 20%. We have some coming in at 40. Again, go ahead and make a prediction on your mobile device or browser. Give it about another 20 seconds. All right. So it looks like about 40% of us are saying there's like about a 20% chance that 2 of these 10 people were born in the same state. So it doesn't sound like it's going to be very likely, right? So that was our initial approach. Okay, so what I'm going to have us do now is to work as a group. Okay, to practice this problem through small groups. We'll be having our breakout groups digitally in groups of 4 to 6, and you'll be working as a team to work through the same scenario for 10 minutes, okay? Attendees of our webinar will be randomly placed in breakout rooms, and please ensure that you click on join to make sure that you are part of your group. And while in the breakout room, you'll be able to only hear yourself, or not yourself, but the others within your breakout. So what you say and see will just be within that breakout. For those of you in this room here, you'll be working with your tables to really collaborate and try to arrive at the solution. Okay. There will be also a hard stop at the end of the 10 minutes for those of you in the virtual breakout rooms. You'll be brought back into the main room, so please be aware of that. And finally, I'd like for one person in each group, whether it be virtual or in person, to describe the thought process in which your group went through in approaching at a solution to this problem. I'd like for you to really think about some of these practices that we talked about, and even the power skills that you all were sharing earlier in our word cloud. And so listed is our science and engineering practices. So just keeping in mind, like what are we using? How are we applying some of these practices throughout the process of approaching this interesting math problem as a group? Okay. All right, so what I'd like for us to do is to go ahead and break out into groups. And we'll start about 10 minutes and we'll come back together to share out.
Around that piece of it.
Anybody else have thoughts on that? Anybody else teaching science currently?
I'm not teaching science currently. I'm writing curriculum. So, but this is definitely a probability problem, and I agree with Jante that we don't do enough of this kind of thinking.
I'm a really big believer that the U.S. math system of culminating towards calculus is a poor choice, and we should be culminating towards statistics, but we don't, and therefore nobody takes anything.
Well, Eric and Jason, I think what we decided was it's a math problem. But we're trying to think about how we set it up.
So I think, yes, hello, this is Jason Porter here. Thanks everyone for your participating in the breakout group here. One thing I'd like to kind of push you a little bit on is it's a math problem, but now, because in the beginning you were solving it alone, right? But now you're in a group. So what's different about solving this problem in a group versus by yourself, right? Because by yourself, you're kind of more like, you know it or you don't know it. And if you don't know how to get there, you don't know how to get there. What are the skills in it? So as you guys are talking, if you really want to focus on getting that answer, I know there's a strong pull to that. What is it you need from the group, or what is it you're doing, or what is the group doing to be able to get you to that answer if you don't already know that? And that's what we'd love to hear from and have share out about. What is it the group can do to try and arrive to a problem you may not know the answer? Because it sounds like a real life situation in working, right? So that's what I'd like to kind of push you guys to talk about, if you don't mind.
We have 4 times as many ways to cheat.
Say that again.
We have 4 times as many ways to cheat. In other words, I've only got so many search terms I can think of on Google and so many people that I could call who might be able to give us a hint or a pathway. But now we have 4 times that amount.
Okay.
I think I'm teaching a methods class right now. Math happens to be an area of focus. What's had been really important, at least in terms of the content that we're talking about, is the importance to just language out a problem, right? To kind of throw out there your thinking around how do you get to an answer, and by allowing kids to actually use some language skills, it actually can help lead them down the pathway of getting to an answer of some sort.
So that's really interesting, Kathy. So are there words in this problem that anyone sees that are really important to solving it?
The one thing is to assume that all possibilities are equal. And so there's a 1 in 50 chance of being born in each state. Now, out of 10, maybe it's 150 raised to the 8th, and that's not, or 150 raised to the 2nd. Wait, if it's 150th raised to the 8th, and we're going to minus by 1, that may give us our answer.
Okay. I love, and I'm about to go into another room, but I just want to interject and say I love that you're thinking exponentially. So within the group, how is it that you guys can help with that? So that exponential path is a good path. How can you guys kind of talk through and figure out what that path is?
Why, Jonte, did you put it to the 8th power?
Because that it's 8 people that are not. And
I can think of a solution, but really I want to see their solution. And then afterwards we will present whatever, our devices or whatever we've come up with. And there's that time to question and ask and critique. So I feel like if you go in with the mentality that there's no one right answer, that, I don't know.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Sorry
No,
to
right
interject here.
answer. Okay.
But joining here with Jason to kind of check in on groups and ask some questions, see how you're doing.
Yeah, hello, sorry, just want to interject real quick. Yeah, this is Jason here. Thank you all very much for discussing this in your groups. So just wanted to remind you that, so we're coming up with the problem, but one thing to the solution, but one thing to think about is, what is it that you as a group can do that you weren't able to do individually, right? So individually, it's kind of like, you know how to get to it or you don't. And if you're not sure, you might struggle a bit. But then when you're in a group, what's different that now you might be able to get to a solution that you didn't have originally? And so as you're coming to the solution, if you can kind of think about that a little bit, what are the skills as a group that you can employ to get to an answer?
So in a generic group, like any group?
Yeah, like for example, the group you're in right now.
Okay, but applying to any and all groups?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I feel like obviously in a group, because I do this, I'm sure, and I know my students do this, you come in with this like, okay, this is the answer. And then you get to hear other people's viewpoints, and that kind of, definitely opens up your thought process. And, not only that, but it helps you be a better teammate, so you take that time to listen to somebody else.
So far, we've come up with solutions on presenting the task or problem with open-ended questions. That's something you could do individually, but as a group, my team member said that she opened a STEM lab to, employ some of these things. But also, as a group, going into it, allowing open-ended questions and seeing that there's no necessarily right answer for the problem, to get discussion going. Discussion and debate.
So yeah, if I can jump in for just a second, Chalisa, is that correct way of saying it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Would you be willing, so we're going to go back to the main group in about a minute or so. Would you be willing to share out some of the things you're just talking about and be like a reporter for your group?
Sure. I just hope I'm able. Do I press the raise the hand?
No,
How do I do that? Or
we'll
just
unmute
unmute?
you. Yeah, we'll unmute you. So,
So-
as soon as
Okay.
he prompts you,
Yeah.
you'll be unmuted, so you'll be good to go.
And that comment specifically about the STEM lab, so what I'm kind of reading into that is almost like being able to test math answers. That's really interesting. So that'd be a great thing to let you share about.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Is it possible that me and my teammate can collaborate for a couple more minutes so we can
Yes,
get some, okay.
of course. Yeah, we'll jump out and then and we'll send a message when we're about to close the groups.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's 0.02.
Yes.
Times 0.02, which gets us, so because that gets us to a particular state. What are the chances that two people are from a particular state would be 0.0004 times 10, because there's 10 options of people to draw from, which increases the odds because it's not just any individual two, it's out of 10.
It's 10 pairs, yeah.
But in pairs, times 50, because it's not a particular state, it's an individual state, which gets us to 20%.
So I'm going to jump in. Oh, sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm going to jump in for just a second. This is Jason again. Jeremy, would you be willing to share, sounds like your group came up with some stuff. Would you be able to share what your group was talking about as far as how as a group you were solving this problem?
Sure, but it was all just stabs in the dark.
Well, I mean, that's a start, right? I think companies have been built on stabs in the dark, so it's a good start. And so how that'll work is when we get back together in about a minute or so, I'll prompt you when it's time to share, and then you need to unmute yourself or Eric will unmute you, and then you can share with the whole group.
Yeah. Okay. Just a reminder, even though we are trying to work towards an answer here, I think we're more interested in sort of the process your group is going through and sort of how you're thinking and working as a group and how that might, how might help develop some of the skills that we've been talking about today. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I think it sounds that sounds like the right idea to me.
Eric, it looks like we're waiting for folks to come back into this room.
Okay, so I'm closing rooms now. We should have everyone joining us in just a second. Okay, so people are joining back with us here. Breakout rooms will be officially shut down in about 27 seconds. We're just waiting for folks to click the button to join us.
We're excited to come back and discuss.
All right.
Okay, so looks like we're all back. So again, thanks everyone in your breakout groups for that really thoughtful discussion. Jason and I had the opportunity to kind of listen in and chat a little bit for everyone. So I will let Jason take it away.
Great. Thanks, Eric. And thank you also to our live audience. I heard you had a lively discussion as well. So thank you very much. So if we can start off with our webinar folks, Shalisa, if you would be willing to unmute yourself and share what your group was talking about as far as what is the group doing to try and solve that problem?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Our group discussed some ways that we can address as a group to address the different problems by possibly starting a STEM lab. One of my group partners, she has started a STEM lab at school for pre-K through 2. Other suggestions was here where we are, our library has STEM drop-in nights, after school drop-in times where students can come in and, you know, just try innovative things, question, think, and have hands-on sessions. Other suggestions were after-school STEM clubs and even, you know, debate clubs, so students can employ their public speaking skills and questioning. And the main thing that what was important was to present tasks or the problem with open-ended questions and allowing the students to you know, openly discuss it and also appreciate other ideas that may not be their own and consider open-ended ideas. So those are some of the things we discussed.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing that. So it sounds to me, looking at the science and engineering practices here, that obtaining, evaluating, communicating was something you felt like was really key for the group to be able to solve this.
Yes, and that there's no right answer when the students are given answers.
Great. Very good. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm going to also ask if Jeremy from the other breakout group, if you'd be willing to share the experience you had in your group.
Sure. I apologize that I don't have a camera on. I have terrible Wi-Fi in the school that I'm in, and when I turn it on, everything goes away. So our conversation was just about, you know, what's different between individual problem solving versus group problem solving, and where we kind of landed was twofold. Number one, you know, obviously we bring different experiences and knowledge pieces to the conversation, but also, and what we sort of discovered as we worked through the problem, it allows us the opportunity to kind of iterate on solutions. So we started off with different pieces of knowledge, but no idea. We're still probably wrong, but we think we got closer because eventually someone in our group, Jonte, came up with a solution that was really close. We think that logically made sense, but wasn't getting to the numbers that we needed. And then, you know, that led us as a group to think about what else, what other factors needed to be added in order to get to the ranges of answers that were options in the problem.
Wow, that's really great. So it sounds to me from what you're saying that kind of asking questions and divining problems. So that, and you actually, if I could share, you mentioned when we were in the breakout group, these kind of like stabs in the dark, right? And I think at first when you said that, you almost were apologizing for that. but I think that's great. Like that, taking that risk where it's like, let me just try this. And then all of a sudden the construct came out that maybe you weren't quite at the right answer yet, but you know, it seemed like a good road to travel. I think that was really interesting. Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing, Jeremy. So we're going to go ahead and open the room to our live audience here as well. So if I could get, we'll probably have time for maybe 2 comments. So if I could get someone want to share, if I could see a hand of someone who's interested in sharing.
My name is Kenny. One thing that just listening to the other 2 groups that shared, when we're hearing about the definition for STEM, one of the things that stood out to me was the soft skills. I mean, we were talking about teachers at the table. So the interpersonal communication just jumps right out. Everybody's really willing to talk and try out, like you said, blind stabs in the dark. Our groups are really willing to do that in this room. And that was our strength. Again, I don't think we have a right answer either, but that was our strength. And I think all the groups in the room are willing to try stuff out.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yep, and we'll take one more.
Hello, everyone. This is Manny Long. The process itself is found it's interesting because in our group we talked about creating mottos, and we really talked about like trying to find the answer, which is I find it really funny because I find like a lot of people look so much for the final solution to things, but they never really enjoy the journey. So I think just through the STEM, we really need to encourage the kids to don't be afraid to like not get the right answer. It's all about the journey. And I just feel like so many times people are just looking to just try to get to the end of it and try to get the answer without realizing everything they learned through the journey of it.
Yeah, thank you, Manny. That's a really great comment. That kind of reminds me with a sports analogy, right? Where you might see like the fastest person in the world, the Olympics. And at the end, they win this race. They got these medals. They break all these records. You walk up and you be like, what can I do tomorrow to be that fast, right? It's not like that. You're not going to do it tomorrow, right? There was a whole process that was everything. And this just happened to be one of those results, right? Other results are very possible. So I think that's really interesting, bring along with that process being as important, if not more important than the actual end that you're getting to. So I think that's really great. Cool. All right. So we know that we discussed this quite a bit when we were setting up the webinar. We knew that we couldn't leave you without actually giving you an answer because we felt like you would all be very grumpy with us. So we are going to actually share an answer. And so the answer is actually very near 60%. Okay. And so, yeah, what? Yeah. What people, what? Yeah. So very near 60%. So we don't have time right now to go through all, yeah, I know. Like, boo, yeah. We don't have time right now to go through all the details, but again, we knew that you wanted them. So if you join our, it's a little dark down here, but our Google group, so the STEM Studio General, there's a link for joining that. We're also going to send that to you after the webinar, so you'll get a chance to join to that. There is a very thorough explanation of how you get to this 60%. The hint I'll give you is that it is an exponential journey. It's not a linear one. And we, right, okay. Are we a little more friends again? Are we okay? Yeah, web people, we all right? Okay. So please do join that forum. Not only is that a place to go find this answer, but it's also a place where you can continue this conversation, which we really hope that you can. So this is an educator forum where we can continue to talk to each other. So we do ask that you please join that and continue this conversation. Yeah. And then I'm going to give back to David over here, and he's going to finish us out.
All right, so I'm just going to close this out, but hearing some of the thoughts and responses from each of the groups is amazing. I think Manny put it pretty well. It's just enjoying the journey, right, versus just trying to jump all the way at the end of the solution. I think a lot of times as educators, we really want to try to build that relevance into the classroom, especially as a math teacher. It was challenging at times to find those ways where the Pythagorean theorem really did, deal with everything that they did. I mean, there's a lot of relevance with different formulas and equations, but I think, we need to do the best that we can to build the relevance, but also at the same time, build the opportunities to develop these power skills. Have time for them to, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others, which is a math practice. And giving them these opportunities, these skills are not just in the math classroom, it's transferable to all the other disciplines, whether it be STEM, non-STEM disciplines. But these are the opportunities I'm really trying to make sure that our students have an opportunity to develop in order to be successful in their future careers. And so with that, we wanted to share a few other things, some upcoming events for our trainings. So we do have a 1-week in-person training called STEM Studio, located in Washington, D.C. and Anaheim this upcoming summer for upper elementary and secondary teachers. You'll see some of the dates up on the board. You can get more information by signing up on our educator community list located in the website. You can also email myself or Jason if you have any questions regarding these trainings. But really excited to have the educators come and join us from throughout the area in these in-person trainings to really not just tackle some of these ideas that we did today, but also really have an opportunity to collaborate with other like-minded educators and be able to go through the process of lesson revision and development. And finally, for those of you on our virtual educator community, we will be sending you an email to hear your thoughts and maybe any other ideas you have in regarding today's experience. All right, and with that, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in person or in our digital space at other TGR EDU Create trainings.
Yeah, and our in-person audience would like to say goodbye. So goodbye, everybody on the web. Thank you for joining.
And for those of you, if you have any questions in our virtual audience, Eric will be sticking around to answer any questions. Thank you.